infrastructure is not equipped to deal with that, then we're going to miss out on opportunities for growth, and we're also going to be in a worse position if we don't think ahead right now.
So sometimes when I've been hearing candidates talk about infrastructure recently, there's been a lot of discussion about things like internet access, telecom services. Is high-speed internet a problem in the rural areas of your district?
Our area is such a unique area. I'll explain it to you kind of this way. Where I live in our district, I live right in the middle of it. Depending on what service you're talking about, I'm either a Madison mailing address, I get my water from Harvest Monrovia, and I get my utilities from Huntsville Utilities. So that did create issues in terms of what services and what internet services were available. Now, I know that's been something that had to be figured out for people who live where I do, but I would imagine as you get closer to, an actual city, such as Harvest, such as the city of Madison, that's less of a concern, but our more rural portions and the portions which are being annexed by Huntsville, I imagine that is something that is going to have to be figured out as well. Internet providers were not available when we first moved in, and now they are. So as areas around where I live and towards Harvest and towards East Limestone become less rural, I would anticipate that will become more complex.
In the second district where you're running, there's currently a Republican senator, state senator.
That's correct.
But he is not running for re-election.
He is not, no.
And so right now your primary is in June, I believe. Is that right? Early June?
That's correct.
And so there's 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans running. What is your sense on the ground of the chances of flipping this district from Republican to Democrat?
I think we have a strong chance to flip it. This district was held by a Democrat until 2010. And given the votes and the turnout for Doug Jones, it's possible. It's not going to be easy. It's going to require a lot of effort, a lot of manpower, and especially a lot of volunteers on the ground getting involved with grassroots efforts. But it's certainly doable, and we have a precedent for having Democratic leadership in this seat. What's interesting, though, about that is the Democratic senator who held the seat for District 2 until 2010 is actually running to reclaim the seat in this election, but now he's running as a Republican.
We heard a similar story in the southern part of the state for U.S. House. There seems to be something going on here.
Yes, it's interesting. It's certainly interesting.
So are you hearing a lot of energy from Democrats since the Doug Jones race? And, there's kind of a blue wave sweeping the country in general. Are you feeling that in your district as well?
Yes, there is. There's a lot of renewed energy. I think that with Doug Jones, people, and especially Democrats in Alabama, before that election had kind of felt like their vote and their voice didn't make a difference. But with that election, we've seen that if we put in the groundwork, if we get out the grassroots, make sure we get out the vote, that our voice and our vote will make a difference and can make a difference. And so I think that people who had not been politically active before now see that they can do something, and there's a renewed energy there.
Tell me a little bit about what it's like to campaign with a child. You are a mother of a fairly young child, is that right?
Yes, she is 3.5, although it feels at times like she's 5.
I have a 3.5-year-old as well, so I'm very familiar with how much energy 3.5-year-olds have.
Yes, she is my little tornado. It's draining and it's taxing, but it is so much fun. I took her to an event with me the other day. She's been active with me campaigning, even when we were campaigning for Doug Jones and trying to get out the vote in that effort. And so now I've taken her to some various events with me for my campaign. And I took her to one yesterday and I asked her, I was like, okay, Ruth Grace, tell everybody who we vote for. And she just looks and goes, Doug Jones. So I was like, okay, he's won. Now tell them to vote for Mommy. But she loves it. I don't think she quite understands what we're doing, but she knows she gets to our buttons and stickers and hand those out, and so she really loves it. I couldn't do it, however, because it does take so much time and effort on my part without my husband, and he has been fantastic and been willing to step up if I need someone to watch our daughter when I have to campaign, or if I'm not able to go somewhere, he's been willing to fill in the gaps, and I would not have been able to do it without his support. I think it's so important to have strong family support if you're going to do this, and especially if you're going to do it with a small child.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that's, as we hear about this wave of more women running for office, it's something that we have to think about a lot, what that means in terms of the way we've thought about families. We've been hearing that from a lot of female candidates, especially ones with young kids, that it's been so important that their husbands have been supportive. And in a lot of ways, it only makes sense, right? I mean, I'm sure wives have been supportive of husbands running for office for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so it's really good to see and really important to see that the husbands are also supporting their wives.
Well, this is something, it's funny, this is something my husband has always wanted to do, running for office. And it's ironic that a couple years ago, I told him that was a silly thing to do. Now I'm the one doing it. So he's thoroughly enjoying telling me that he told me so.
So in your race in the 2nd district, you are the only woman who is running.
That's correct.
Have you faced any sexism, overt or, less overt, as you've been running for office?
Not overt sexism. I will say that not only am I a woman running for office, but I'm a younger woman running for office. And a lot of the things that I notice are some of the same things that I've noticed as an attorney in my day-to-day profession. People tend to see, I think, especially women who look younger, although I'm not quite as young as I look, and assume that they don't know what they're doing, or they have a lack of experience, or they're not going to be able to handle the job. So a lot of the comments I've gotten have been well-intentioned, and aimed, I think, at ultimately trying to help me do the best job. But they're comments that I've noticed that I don't think men would have gotten had they been running instead. I've also gotten a fair number of random people trying to hit on me over social media after I started this race. And I've asked some of my male counterparts running for office, and that seems to be a phenomenon that is confined to the women.
Yeah.
So those are two of the main things that I've noticed, but nothing really overt, nothing that has been really terrible. And like I said, the comments I get from men, I think, are aimed at helping and wanting to tell me how they would do it. And, you just have to take it with a grain of salt and take it from the perspective that, look, this is going to be your constituent. He's just trying to help you, and go from there.
So this may be something that you've been dealing with for a long time as a lawyer, a woman lawyer working in the South, but do you feel any pressure to dress a certain way, to sort of look a certain way, to project what people are expecting out of a candidate?
I think that would be there regardless of whether I was a woman or a man running. I think it's important that when you're running for office, or when you're engaging in a field of practice like law, to look like you're able to do the job, because you are. And you have to confront the reality that if you don't look like that, people are going to have questions, and they are going to have doubts, because they do make this snap-second judgment about you and your capabilities before they want to listen to you go on a lengthy rant about healthcare, education, or their legal case, as the case may be.
Yeah, so in podcasting, this is something I can do in my pajamas, but I'm sure that running for office is not not the same.
It's not, but luckily I have a lot of suit from my time in the legal field, so I'm well stocked up.
Let's just talk for a couple of minutes about the issues that are most important to you and what you hope to put into place. So we've talked a little bit about infrastructure, but I know that healthcare is something that's really important to you. Can you talk a little bit about what you would like to see happen in healthcare, what sorts of legislation you would like to see, you would like to propose?
Certainly. Well, first of all, I'd like to look at ways that we can expand healthcare in Alabama to ensure that more families have access to the care they need and don't have to worry about being bankrupted by a health crisis. I think that some of the ways we can do that would be to expand Medicaid, and to ensure that any legislation that we have coming out of Montgomery that mandates insurance coverage for any particular services doesn't carve out pockets of uninsured or pockets of insurance where that coverage wouldn't apply.
Is healthcare something that you see a lot of constituents worrying about and talking about?
Yes, certainly. More so on a national level, but I think there is worry about it at a state level as well, because almost half of all Alabama births are covered by Medicaid. It's something that, if it's impacted here, would have a very real and negative effect on our state.
And I also wanted to ask about education. I know that on a whole, the Alabama education system doesn't always get the highest marks. So I'm wondering what sorts of things you'd like to see happen in education. And of course, that's something that is very important state level politics.
Exactly. Education is a complicated issue in Alabama. I don't feel that we are investing in our education as adequately as we should be. We also have yet to strike the right balance, I think, between tracking our students' progress and giving our teachers the flexibility and accountability necessary to do their jobs and close the achievement gap. So I'd like to look at ways that we can better fund education and give our teachers some flexibility to best teach. I also think that we haven't come up yet with a really great solution to address a shift in our culture. And we haven't addressed the fact that over the years, more and more things that have traditionally been the province of parents, in which they used to do for their students outside the home, have been shifted to teachers. And when parents are no longer able to engage in that role, it makes the teacher's job harder because they have to come and fill in that gap. Right now, I know our state legislature is pushing a cradle to pre-K initiative to get our students ready to learn by the time they enter kindergarten, which I think is wonderful and can help, kind of step into that gap and go ways to addressing that issue. I'd like to see us invest in after-school programs and funding to return more counselors to our schools. And again, I'd like to ensure that we're properly incentivizing our teachers to ensure that we retain the best and the brightest teachers by making sure that their salaries keep pace with what we're asking them to do and with the cost of living. I will just add that my parents are retired now, but they were both public school educators for over 20 years. So education is something that's near and dear to my heart.
Are there any other issues that we haven't talked about yet that are really important in your campaign?
There's a couple that I feel are also really important to my campaign. One is bringing greater transparency to Montgomery, greater transparency and greater accountability to Montgomery. As you may know, Alabama has seen its share of scandals over the past recent couple of years. And we need to address why not only those scandals happened, but why our legislature wasn't quicker to act. I also think we need to address prison reform through sentencing reform. As you may know, Alabama's prisons are overcrowded right now, and there's been talk about how we need to expand and rebuild some of our prisons. I think that is a partial solution to the problem. And until we address why so many people are going into prisons and how we can engage in some sentencing reform to decrease the crowding, that merely building or refurbishing our prisons is not going to ultimately solve our issue.
Well, is there anything else that you would like people to know either about you or the 2nd District?
Really, I'd just like to go back to why I feel like I am the best choice for Alabama State Senate District 2. As I said, I am a childhood cancer survivor. I'm half deaf. I have been without access to health care in my life, and I know the difference that makes. For me personally, it was a night and day difference between how much I was able to work and function. And so I know what our citizens would be facing if we decrease their access to health care. As the child of 2 public educators, I know what our educators are facing on a day-to-day basis because I've watched my parents struggle with it. I've watched them, pay money out of their own pocket to help their students and ensure their students have the best chance of success, even as their pay was never increased to keep up with the cost of living. I understand infrastructure, my daughter and my husband, to take them to their activities, to get my husband to the arsenal. We have to go down roads which are in need of repair and aren't sufficient for the traffic every day. And it takes an inordinate amount of time, and it's only going to get worse. So I feel the impact of each of these issues that are kind of the kitchen table issues that are facing our district. Additionally, I've said that I'm an appellate attorney. What that means, basically, is that I write and research law for a living. So I have a background in analyzing legislation and case law, which will enable me to analyze the legislation and help draft my own legislation as it comes out of Montgomery, and to ensure that the legislation we're putting forward isn't going to negatively impact our district in a way that's not anticipated. So I have the heart to do the job, and I also have the skill set and experience that would make me a valuable asset and go a long way to helping our constituents. Also, if you're interested in finding out more of my campaign, you can go to my website, www.wasylukaforsenate.com. You can also donate. We need as many people as we can, not only to donate, but also to volunteer. There's also a place to volunteer on my website. And I would love everyone's support. And of course, if you're in my district, State Senate District 2, I would love to have your vote in the primary on June 5th, 2018.
All right, fantastic. And we will put the link to your website in our show notes, just in case anybody can't figure out how to spell Wasyluka.
If they can, I wouldn't